Good morning, Rob.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody.
Well, as you could tell, we're not at home. This is, actually, we're in a hotel room.
Yes,
Why are we in a hotel room?
because we celebrated our 20th anniversary. It's kind of weird to say that, though. I don't really know because we've been together for 20 years.
20 years.
We've been married for...
Officially over 20 years now.
Yeah, officially over 20 years now.
We've been married for 13.
13 years. And I told them that we really needed to reason to celebrate because on our 10th year wedding anniversary, it was during COVID times, and we never really got to a chance to celebrate it. So it was just kind of rolling over. And this 20th anniversary, it's like a big deal to us. And
Yeah,
so
I mean, we're 39, so 20 years is more than half of our life.
Yeah.
We've been a couple for more than half of our life.
You know, you've been talking about that for 20 years to me. He's like, it's going to be cool.
There's going to be a point where we've been together longer than we've been separate.
Yeah.
And we're officially past that.
I know. I remember you saying that in the early days of our relationship, and look, we are talking about exactly where we are now. Like we're at 20, what?
God is good.
20 years, yes. And so today it's just going to be a little bit different. Instead of
Bible study. We're going to have a little conversation.
We're going to pause from that. Actually, we have a podcast, the continuation and finishing last week's podcast. And it's about 10 minutes.
There was an upload error. So she's got 10 minutes of the last conversation that we're going to put in front of this or after this?
I'm going to post it separately.
Oh, okay.
And then that way you guys can finish that podcast, that way there's good continuation of your study. And then if you didn't get a chance to watch that or listen to it, and then you're here with us and get to figure out what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I like it. But
last night we saw Tim Allen.
Yep, we went to the Hard Rock Cafe.
Is that how you said it? It was an awesome,
it was pretty funny.
Show.
I've never been to a comedy show before, so didn't really know what to expect. And I never done any research on Tim Allen's stand-up, so it was like two things. I didn't know exactly what to expect as a comedy show other than what I've seen on TV, and then I'd never seen Tim Allen stand-up, but it was cool. I had a blast.
It was so fun.
We ran into some friends of ours we haven't seen in a very long time.
Yeah, it was
coincidentally.
Yeah, it was really fun because we went there. First of all, Robbie and I, that's not our... I don't know. We don't really like that kind of stuff. Well, I don't know. Like, we never got a chance to do stuff like that.
I like shows. So, I just, casinos aren't that's not my go-to place.
Yeah.
And then, I like concerts and stuff here and there, but it's not something that we seek out constantly.
Yeah,
but it's rare.
Yeah, but it was like, when we got there, it was just all these lights and excitement, and it was like, I didn't like the smoking, and we grabbed a couple of drinks, and got in line. It was so many people there, but it was a nice experience actually.
It was
to
fun.
Be out,
and it wasn't overly crowded. I don't think.
No,
it wasn't like a lot of other concerts and stuff that I've been to where it is just you're shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah,
the crowd's insane. This was pretty calm actually.
It was a really nice casino. To be honest with you, I've been like maybe a handful, and it's overly crowded. It just kind of smells. Maybe it's because it's new. It's the Hard Rock Cafe in Sacramento, Wheatland. Yeah, and it was really
That's
cool.
a newer casino.
Yeah.
And I know the ones that we've been to in Lake Tahoe, they've been around for a while.
Yeah.
They are, and they've been heavily smoked in. They've been around a while.
You have that smell, that. Yeah. But that one was really nice. And and the show was super cool.
Yeah, it was cool. The opener was really funny. It was about 15 minutes or so, right? But it was 15 minutes of nonstop laughing. That dude was funny.
It was so funny.
I wish I remember his name.
But if you guys get a chance to watch Tim Allen live, you have to.
That was cool.
It's really fun. So anyway, we're going to be talking about how these 20 years has gone and how God really helped shape our relationship. The majority of what is good in our not majority, I think all the things that it's good in our relationship.
I can tell you straightforward right now, if God didn't intervene in my life, we wouldn't be married and we wouldn't be together doing this right now.
For sure. So let's start in the beginning, all the way to
20 years ago.
20 years ago. Day one.
20 years of this. This goofiness.
It's so funny, you guys, because Robbie, he's so
I'm
usually
uptight.
calm and he doesn't like to get embarrassed, and I enjoy that. I enjoy that, like the
She enjoys watching me squirm.
yes, and that's like a fun 20 years experience for me. I would think you're so used to that now, but I guess you really haven't.
I'm just uptight. I don't know. I can be goofy sometimes, but it's rare. And
Yeah, it's like he can't let loose. I have to like, especially when I'm taking a video. He's like, "Oh my gosh, really, Joy?" And I'm like, "Ah," like crazy, and he's just like standing there looking
well, like
a
yesterday, for example, I thought she was taking pictures and selfies and stuff, and then I would stop and look at the camera, and she's like, "Well, we're doing a video." I'm like, what? It was just hilarious. It happened a lot. But,
Okay.
So 20 years ago.
So how did you see me 20 years ago? Like, what was the thing that was?
I was working at Walmart.
Yeah.
I was when I was going to school to be a mechanic. I was also working at Walmart doing oil changes and tires. Kind of goes hand in hand, I guess. I was 18 or 19. Yeah, I was 19 at the time.
Yeah.
Right? I was already. I had just turned 19 because
Yeah.
I had just turned 19. And then they hired her as a cashier. Like one of the girls up front as a cashier, and I just thought she was really cute. But everybody else thought she was really cute. I'm not trying to. I'm working. I got a job to do. I'm not trying to go flirt with people on my work hours. So I kind of just whatever. We'll continue working. Yeah. All the other dudes though, they dropped what they were doing and went to try to talk to her. And
So crazy
I guess
to
my lack of interest spiked her interest. So
Well, actually, he has that. He thinks that's the story in my mind, but I didn't know that all the guys were wanting to get with me. I'm just a naturally very friendly person, so I don't know if that, and then also like I'm also gullible, and so especially during the time, right? And so when
Yeah.
guys are coming to me and like hugging me, and it's like, hey, talking to me and stuff, I just thought it was just a very friendly conversation. And so all these guys, I didn't know they were trying to get with me, but anyways, and I wasn't interested in any of them. And Robbie, I remember I still have that picture of you, but he was walking down, I was the cashier in Walmart, and this mechanic was walking, like not even passing his hoodie. His all like, I think he was wearing blue sweater.
Not much different than what I'm wearing right now.
Yeah,
I had a hood
exactly.
on, my goggles. They
He has the
made us wear
goggles,
safety glasses
and I think you
constantly.
were wearing a blue vest.
Yeah, the Walmart vest.
It's the Walmart vest.
The Walmart TLE vest with my name.
And exactly, like you had your hands in
You'll
your
have to find that
pocket.
photo and see if you could post it up on this.
yeah,
I don't know if we have enough time for that.
yeah.
But we have that photo somewhere.
Yeah, and then so he had this goggles on, and I was just like, it's like, oh my gosh, who is that guy in the goggles? And I was talking to my friend, my coworker, and she's like, oh yeah, that's Robbie. And so every once in a while, I'll see him go to his break and stuff, and I was like, hey Robbie, and he's like, hi, and he'll walk past me.
I was busy. I had a job to do. I wasn't there. Well, like I said too, everybody else was trying to flirt with her, so I was like, I'm not going to compete with these dudes. I got a job to do, and I'm out of here. I go to school, and then I go home.
Yeah.
I just hadn't. It wasn't in my radar to try to pick up on a girl while I'm working. But she just kept making it a point to talk to me, and making it a point to. Eventually, I caught on that. Hey, wait a minute! She's taking her breaks when I take my break.
Yeah, because I made it super obvious too. I remember.
Thankfully.
Yeah, because
I was oblivious.
I was just like, "Hi, Robbie," and he's like, "Hi," and then I would walk by. I was like, "Where are you going? Hey, where are you going?" And he's like, "I'm gonna take my lunch." I'm like, Maria, I'm gonna take my lunch too. Okay. Like
Yeah, so
I
even
totally.
at this point, I'm still like oblivious because I was, I don't know. But when I learned, it was when Joy and her coworker, the other cashier, Joyce. I think that's her name, right? Joyce?
Yeah, Joyce.
I'm walking by, and Joyce is like, Robbie, are you single? And as soon as she said that, I see Joy just drop below the counter. And
then at that moment.
That's when I went, oh, okay, this is starting to make some sense now.
Oh, my gosh. Duh, Robbie. I was trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
So that's how we met. During that time, I remember, too, I made a vow, and forgive me, Lord, for this, because I remember I would be one boyfriend after another. You know, I would meet guys, at that moment, I was like, I don't want to meet anybody, Lord. I want you to send me somebody that I can marry. I don't want to just meet random people. I just want to meet.
Well,
the
you
guy.
didn't break your vow because he
Yeah.
married me.
Yeah, yeah. And at that moment, I was like, I'm not gonna date until that. I'm just gonna not date, you know. And that's where I met you. And
Well, I ended up inviting her to a Halloween party. I think I might have actually thrown the party so I could invite her to a Halloween party. And then
you could have just asked me on a date. To get all this.
I was 19 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, and then I ended up kissing her that night, and that was 20 years ago. So
that was 20 years ago
our
on
anniversary.
Halloween.
Yep. So
Yep.
we celebrate. We don't always celebrate our anniversary.
No.
But this 20-year anniversary was kind of a big one. So
Yeah.
this 20 years on Halloween was
Our 20th.
And I don't know,
20
did I
years.
ever officially ask you to be my girlfriend or anything? Or did I
No,
just kiss you
we
and I
just
assumed you were mine?
yeah, exactly. It was like no.
Yeah.
Our relationship is really not like you would expect. You never really asked me. Oh, and another thing, I remember when we started dating, we'll move a little bit forward from meeting. He told me, I remember him telling me, I was like, sat me down. It's like, hey, Joy, I got to talk to you. It's really important. And I just want you to know that you're going to have your life. I'm going to have my life. And we're going to have a life together. What do you think about that? I was like, what the heck? And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I'm going to have my life. Like, I'm going to hang out with my
There's
buddies.
things I'm going to do,
Yeah.
and I'm going to do some things without you. You're not going to have to be by my side 24/7.
Yeah.
My previous relationship before that was somebody that just was so clingy. It was it was probably the reason why I didn't work out, and I wasn't doing that again. I was like, I have to be able to do my thing because
Yeah.
I can't be with you 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make that clear from the get-go.
Right. And it was actually so bold, and I was so
Enamored.
I was like, wow, this guy knew what he wanted. I think because a lot of times I know what I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew when I saw you, I'm like, I wanted this guy. I want to date this guy. But at that moment, you took initiative to tell me, I'm like, hey, this is what I want. And I think that was a really good thing for me because I am strong-willed person, that if someone like tells me how it is, I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't need to be in control of everything.
Yeah, and I think I was supposed to move to Sacramento too.
Yeah.
We
were
like
at this-
a
we
couple
were-
months or 3 months into our
We were
relationship.
living at this moment together. We were living in
Yeah.
Fremont together.
Yeah, she moved in really quickly, actually. I wouldn't recommend that now.
No.
But we at that moment, I had no faith.
Yeah.
Joy's was kind of
I knew Jesus. I walked with him for, I was saved at 16. And at this moment, what we call, our flesh against the spirit, I was definitely walking in the flesh at that moment because we were living together. I never wanted to do that for myself. And I knew God didn't want that for me, for us, until we got married,
And I think at this point, too, I didn't want to get married. My parents were divorced. And I think at that moment, if I remember correctly, I didn't believe in marriage. I didn't think that was anything that my parents couldn't do it, so why would I even try?
Yeah.
I think that was my mindset.
Yeah, and you did tell me that. And you told me, but then there was something about you and that I was so drawn to. And I remember crying to the Lord, like, why bring him to me then? If this is what's gonna happen, why did you bring him to me? Because I am like so madly in love with him.
Yeah. Well, I think didn't you say something? I remember you telling me this, or I heard it before. It was when you met my folks, my mom and my stepdad and
it
family.
was yes, and it's funny because last night we actually went to teppanyaki. I think that's what it's called. And in the
Where they cook in
Japanese,
front of you.
yeah, they cook in front of you, and I've never been to one except 20 years ago. And 20 years ago is when I met his mom and Joey. And I remember that's what it was, right. I remember sitting there, and at that moment I was contemplating on breaking up with you because we were living together. I knew it was not what God's plan for me, and I was just like, knew I was gonna break up with you at that moment because I couldn't be disobedience to God. And anyways, it was his mom's birthday in November, and I just loved her so much. You know, she's.
Well, you saw that they had faith. They saw that. I think
Uh-huh.
you're talking to them, and so you knew my mom had faith. Joey
Yeah.
had faith. You found out that her parents, my grandparents, were pastors and ran a.
Then she was telling me all about it, and
Yeah.
and your mom was so sweet to me, and I just then fell in love with his family. And at this moment, I thought God was joking. You know, I was like, "What? I'm so lost right now. I was gonna break up with this guy, and then you had me meet his family. Like, how is this like? And his family loves the Lord, and this guy doesn't. Like, I'm so confused. You know.
I was
And-
confused too.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the
and then
time.
at that moment, I remember making decision to not talk to God
Mm-hmm.
because at that moment I was like, I can't. I don't know. I know what God wants for me, and I don't want that for myself. And so I'm not gonna. What am I gonna do? I'm not gonna talk to him because I don't want him telling me things, and I don't. It's confusing time. I felt like he wanted me to stay single, but he had me meet this guy, and I was gonna break up with him, and he had me meet his family. And his family loves the Lord, but this guy doesn't. And it was just a lot of confusion at that moment.
Yep.
And I think now, thinking back, is because I didn't have that relationship with the Lord to trust Him.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's making me cry, but I'm just so grateful to God because I think relationship would work so much better if we had that kind of relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. Well, I think the Lord is probably allowing you to do those things without
Yeah.
too much rebuke because I wasn't on that page. Had you been like super aggressive with your beliefs and what God wanted and
Yeah.
listening to His calling to you right away, I would have probably been turned off and like, okay, well, this isn't working out because I don't share those same beliefs.
I think that he would have, if I honored him and I obeyed everything would have worked out. I think our disobedience is not what he wants, but I think in the midst of our disobedience, he makes things work out.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that your disobedience was resulted in blessing. I think that I just think God's timing, right? Is what it comes down to.
Yeah. He used every moment
because He used you to get to me.
Right.
And had that not have happened, had you not have responded the way you responded, whether it be like, in disobedience or not, I don't. In the way that it's worked out to this point, it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe it would have worked out. God can do miracles, so it probably would have worked out in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard to imagine how that way would have been.
Yeah.
Because it took me time. Like
You did.
So
yeah.
after moving on with the story a little bit, we lived together for quite a while.
Yeah.
We ended up moving back home. We were renting a house, and then ended up moving back to my dad's house for a bit, trying to get out of college, getting into jobs. For me, I was at a trade school, getting out of trade school, getting into a job, a career. Joy was at that point starting to go to college, and then I was just partying. I smoked a lot of pot, drank a lot of liquor, drinks, beer, whatever.
Mm-hmm. It was
I would say every day, probably.
Yep.
Every day.
It was like party house.
Yeah, and then
Party house.
and then that's when you started getting told to you can't be here, you can't be doing this stuff. Like the Lord was talking to you.
Yeah, I remember at that moment. I remember seeking the Lord, but I felt like He wasn't there. Like I would pray and I wouldn't feel anything. It's not just the feeling, but I wouldn't. On a day now, looking back now, He speaks to me through His words when I read the Bible, and I just felt like His presence was away for some reason. I can't. It's hard to describe that unless you know how that is. But I remember living with you, and I'm like, man, doesn't feel right. But I don't know why it didn't feel right, you know. And I went to Azusa, and it was like a event in Azusa, California. Robbie's cousins went.
The Harvest Festival.
harvest. It was, no, it was a Azusa festival or something. Of something. It was just like nations went to that particular place, and it was just a bunch of worship. And um, Uncle Grant took me, and Kayla was there, and all your cousins, and we went. And I remember, and it was this like significant area. It was just a significant time of my life. And I remember being this worship room, and it was just so many people of all ages. And I remember my our aunt, Auntie Cheryl, was on the ground, and she was crying, and she was praising the Lord, and I was just standing there feeling nothing, and that wasn't me at all. And I was like, what is happening? Like, where are you, Lord? Where are you? Like, how come I don't feel your presence? And I know you're here. I see people.
I could see the
I
reactions.
can see the reaction of people. I know, but why does it feel? It was like, it was the separation from God. I felt at that moment was so tangible that it was just like a bitter taste in my mouth. That's the thing that could best describe that. And I was like, what is this, Lord? Why are you so far away? And he's like, I'm going to take a moment because I'm going to cry, because that was like the most significant part of our relationship. And God said, I never left. I was always present. I was always here with you. You went away. You walked away. And I said, and that's when I started crying, and I was like, forgive me, Lord. What is it that I have to do so that you will never disappear, that you will stay with me? What is it that I have to do? And he told me at that moment, he said, you need to honor your marriage. Not even like, I'm not even married, you know? And he's like, you need to honor your marriage. You need to honor me by honoring that covenant. And that was it. I remember that.
Yeah. So this is probably 2 years after we've been dating.
Yeah, 2 years after we've been dating.
Because it was like probably like 05, 06-ish is when this happened.
Yeah.
And we started dating in 2003.
Right.
So it's been a couple years of.
We've been living together for those.
Wow. So we have had developed a pretty good relationship.
Yeah.
And I remember, so you came back, and I was agnostic at the time, so I wasn't atheist. I don't think I've ever claimed to be atheist, because I just didn't know, and I just didn't care. Like, my whole thought is that there could be a God, there could not be a God. I just don't care, and I'm going to do what I want to do, and that was it, right?
Right.
So when you came home and you gave me like a brief explanation of what happened, I was angry. I wouldn't say I was angry at God. I was just kind of angry. Like, this is like, you're going to make decisions that are affecting both of us based off of something that you've experienced. Like, I don't know, it just seemed to me was whatever. Like, okay, fine, you do what you want to do. And so within the week well, go ahead, you tell the story better, because I came home.
And I just remembered coming home, and I remember I'm not going to allow Robbie to talk me out of it. That was the thing. I couldn't let him talk me out of it, because I loved him.
And she's referring to moving.
Yeah, I was going to move out. And at this moment, I was thinking, if I let him talk me out of this, I would stay, because I loved you so much. And so I was like, I need to do this without that. And I packed my bags when you were at work. I remember packing my bags. I remember I didn't have much. I just had my clothes. And when you arrived, and I was like, hey, this is what happened, and I'm gonna be moving to Sacramento. And I remember you being angry, and I left. And we didn't really talk about it. But the thing that was before I left, I told you, I was like, hey, I love you. I want to be with you. And the Lord is talking to me and telling me that he doesn't want us living together. We're not married. And he wants me to honor the marriage that he has for me in the future. And you were kind of mad, but you didn't.
I don't get.
You were so patient, though.
Yeah, I don't get angry. I mean, I get angry and mad, but I don't get like violent. I don't get.
No.
It's more of an internal, just.
Yeah.
Upset. I think upset is the right word.
Yeah, and we talked about it, and I told you and I remember telling you, hey, I'm not gonna try to make you stay. You can, we can be together if you want, or if you wanna break up, that's okay too. I understand, but I have to do what I have to do. And at that moment, we didn't really say. We're so weird, huh? We didn't really ask each other to be our girlfriend. We didn't really break up or not break up.
Yeah.
We just kind of let things roll naturally.
We were during all of that, we were to each other only. What do you call it? Monot.
Monogamy,
Yeah.
monogamous.
It was all but monogamous during that whole from the kiss at Halloween and to now. There's been no openness
Yeah.
of anybody else. It's just like
It was just you and me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was no one else. It was
It was, even though we've been unofficial, it was official. It was
Yeah.
officially unofficial.
yeah, you know.
And so so you end up moving back. At that moment, you went to your dad's house, your mom's house.
Yeah, because they bought a
they bought
house
the
in Elk Grove,
Okay.
remember?
And that's when you started going to college out there.
I
and
went
all
to
that
college.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so it was, that became our beginning of our long distance relationship.
Long distance relationship.
Yeah.
And I can tell that this guy like loved me because he would drive every weekend to see
Every week,
me.
yeah, I drove. I've probably. I could safely say I've driven over 1 million miles.
Yeah.
In my 20 years of driving.
Wow. It was
not just to her house, but just in general.
Yeah.
I've definitely driven over 1 million miles.
Yeah.
Um,
And I remember
drove a
at
lot.
this moment too, Robbie, I emailed you. Remember? I was like, "Hey, I just want you to know that I emailed you a ring."
Wasn't it before that?
Was it?
I don't remember. Very short. I want to say it was before that. I think we might have even been when we were living
maybe
in.
during the same time you told me that you weren't going to get married.
It might have been. Well, and I think that all happened in Fremont. So
Yeah.
that all happened within like the first few months of us
Okay,
dating.
sorry.
I want to say you sent me that ring picture.
Yeah.
And I saved that picture. I had it in my.
I just had this
I-
weird feeling that I was going to marry this guy, and
And she said that too.
Yeah.
That wasn't something she kept to herself.
Yeah.
She said that like probably within a few months of us dating.
yeah, I was like, you know what? I think I know I'm going to marry you,
Yep.
and I don't know why, but I know I have a feeling I'm going to marry you. And
Yeah. So yeah. But yeah. So yeah, she sent me the picture of the ring, and then that's actually the wedding ring I ended up buying for her when we finally did get engaged.
Finally get married. Yeah. But
but-
so at this moment, I was in Sacramento,
Yeah,
and
so
you were in
So
still.
we were
in San Juan
dating for
Bautista.
2 years. You moved out, and we had a long distance relationship.
That was for 7 years. We had long distance.
But we
for
still had. We still weren't following exactly what the Lord wanted us to do.
Yeah.
We weren't living together, but we were doing things that we shouldn't have been
we
doing.
were still
not
having
married.
sex. I mean, to be blunt,
blunt.
that's what it is. And yeah, it was like. But the first step for us to do was really that separation because for me, I was like, I can't ask God to bless my marriage if I'm not even walking with Him and what He wants me to do. And so walking away from that was a very minor step, but it was a big minor and big, you know.
And also at that moment too, I still had no faith. I still haven't been saved.
You're still partying
So
a lot.
my goal at that moment was to get you to sleep with me.
Yeah.
Even though we weren't weren't living together, it was still like I was very disrespectful, and I'm sorry for this. But my goal was to get you to sleep with me.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you've never really actually told me that.
Well, yeah, I'm a dude. I was a 20-year-old.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I know
20s,
guys' intentions, but you never really flat out
said it. Yeah. Well,
said
camera does it, I guess. Anyway, so she moved around a little bit. So she lived with her dad, and then stuff happened with that house, and then you moved in with Uncle June, and then you end up going to Sac State. So I paid her rent.
Yeah.
I rented her an apartment.
He rented me an apartment.
And then
during this moment, I was like, man, and I remember telling you a few times, it's like, Robbie, there's nothing here that's stopping you from letting go if that's what you want, you know?
I didn't want to let go. So much so that I didn't rent a place for myself. I wasn't homeless, but I would just go sleep on my friend's couch for a couple days. I would sleep in my truck at work for a day. I'd go to my dad's house for a couple days, my mom's house for a couple days. I couldn't pay 2 rents. So
Yeah.
I paid for her rent, and then I just figure out wherever I laid my head.
Yeah.
But at that time it was easy because I just go to my buddy's house and we just drink, and then hey, I can't drive home. Can I sleep on your couch?
Yeah.
That was pretty much.
You took care of me, babe. Like
Yeah.
even that time moment when I'm like far away, and I know people at that, even now, like thinking back, if someone with our kids, I'm like, don't do that.
My
That's
dad
not
told me
very-
not to do that.
Yeah.
My dad told me, like, you're paying for her, all this stuff for her to do, and she's going to graduate college and she's going to leave. I'm like, well,
And
I
that
guess.
was like a wise, what do you call it?
Advice.
Advice, though.
Yeah.
I mean, really, coming from a parent, it's a really wise advice. You know what I mean? Because you never know, right? Like, you never know if someone's taking advantage of you. But because people didn't know who we are as individuals, we didn't know our intentions, you know.
Yeah.
And so fast forward.
If I was going to say fast forward too. Yeah, fast forward 5 years in. We're at that she's got that little apartment in Sacramento. And I got a heads up from my mom. My mom is, I guess you could say my mom is to blame for our marriage.
No, I'm gonna go back a little bit.
Okay, go back a little bit.
Before that part. And I remember another big thing that happened to us. Like Melissa and Daniel came to visit us, and man, our friends. Every time I see them, I feel like, man, God is speaking to me. And I talked to you about this before. I have a few friends that they're like the walking Bible to you. You know, if you don't read the Bible and someone tells you something, it's because they're the walking Bible to you. And at that time, I wasn't reading my Bible. I kind of you know Bible verses here and there, but they were studying the Word, and so they were just spitting out verses to me, you know. And so when they came to visit, I was almost afraid because I knew they were gonna tell me
They're
something.
going to speak to you.
You know, and we were talking about marriage and how, you know, and it was just something about our conversation, and God was like starting to be in our midst again, and God was saying, okay, Joy, time to honor the marriage. And I keep saying, like, I did, like, I laughed. He's like, no, you need to honor the marriage bed. You need to honor the covenant. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I tell him this, he's definitely going to break up with me.
I remember that after our engagement. I don't.
It was
that
before.
was before. Our
It was
engagement?
before our engagement.
Oh, okay.
We were celibate for a while.
Before our engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
my timeline's off. I don't remember. I just remember having a conversation with my mom, and my mom's like, you know, you better hurry up because we're 5 years dating at this point,
Yeah.
right? We're close to it. I think we're like 4 years dating. Yeah, we're definitely 4 years dating because I proposed on our anniversary, so we're 4 years dating. And then I'm having a conversation with my mom, and my mom says, you know, she's a good girl. You guys have been together for a long time. You should solidify this. You should, you know, yeah.
And the reason why I remember it being before, because we were, so the story goes, right? So God told me I need to not sleep with this guy. I'm having sex, and that is about marriage, and I'm not honoring that. And so I go tell Robbie, I'm like, hey, Rob, like, God spoke to me, and he told me we can't sleep anymore.
So we were celibate for that long?
We were celibate for that long, and it took a while though.
blur.
It was. I remember for a year we were like
We had failures.
We had failures. And I was like, I can't. And
I remember her kicking me out of the bed and telling me to sleep on the floor.
That's why. It's
Yeah.
because of. And then at that moment, I was like, you know what, Robbie, we can't do this. Like, I cannot be lukewarm. I have to just obey.
Yeah,
You know?
I do remember at a certain point. My timeline's messed up, but I do remember at a certain point that you asked me to get out of the bed.
Yeah.
And
And then just imagine,
and
guys.
multiple times I
Oh,
had to
yeah.
sleep on the floor.
No, like after like certain amount of years you did until you were able to like keep it together. But I remember, because I remember I would visit your mom and Joe, and I would spend the night. And I remember one night she knocks on the door and you're on the ground, and she's like, "What the heck? What's going on here?" I was like, "Oh yeah, he's been sleeping on the floor for a while." And it was just I don't know what she was thinking at that moment, but I remember. I had you sleep on the floor. I couldn't have you sleep with me because, you know, you're a dude with needs.
But yeah, so that's all the thing too. But so anyway, I had the conversation with my mom, and she's like, you know, you should, you know, if you're serious about this girl, you should propose, like make it happen, because
Mm-hmm.
like she could leave. She could, she loves you. She's a good girl. Make something happen. And
Yeah.
so I took it to heart. And I'm like, maybe I will. So I actually old fashioned. I got a hold of her dad, and I asked his permission, which he scared the crap out of her, because I call him up, and it's rare that I call her dad, and I call her dad. Hey, can I get together and talk to you? And so he hangs up with me. He immediately calls her. What did you do to Robbie?
Like, what did you do? My dad loves Robbie. In the beginning,
And
backstory. In the beginning,
I
when
had a
my
mohawk.
dad saw
I was
Robbie,
a punk rock kid with a mohawk.
yeah, we had a mohawk, and I remember I introduced Robbie to my dad, and my dad was saying like in Tagalog, I said, "Ano ba yan? Joy, he's gonna kill you. Did you see that guy? He's gonna kill you, Joy." I was like, okay, calm down, Filipino
A
dad.
19-year-old white kid with a big old mohawk. I had probably like 6 piercings in my ears, tattoos. I drove some beat up old truck.
Yeah. And I remember my dad was always serious. I was like, calm down, But getting to know Robbie, oh man, he loved Robbie.
Yeah.
And
But so I asked for his permission. He gave it to me, and then it actually was 15 years ago. On our 5th anniversary. It's funny because I hid the ring in the house, in the apartment, like for the whole weekend, and then I think Halloween was like the day before I had to go home.
Yeah.
And we had planned like a fancy dinner at the house, and we cooked and sat down and had like a romantic dinner, and then that's when I came back with the ring and I proposed. Just her and I proposed, and that was a Halloween 15 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, so I want to go back to honoring the Lord. A lot of things that happens, I feel, in this relationship is because when we begin to honor God, He begins to see that and bless that. I'm not saying that He can't bless you in the midst of hardship, in the midst of anything, because God can do anything He wants to do.
Did, because I still, at this point in our story, I'm still not a believer.
Yeah.
I'm just doing what you want to do because I loved you.
Yeah.
I didn't,
Yeah,
I didn't believe in the whole celibacy thing. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I had no relationship with Christ.
So
none
at
of that
this
mattered to
moment,
me.
so when we got engaged, we were celibate at that moment, and you were sleeping on the ground, and I held fat, like I wasn't about to go there, and we got engaged, and I remember freaking out at that moment. First of all, I was like so happy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna marry the man of my dreams. I've loved this guy forever. To when you laugh, to like, oh shoot, Lord. And my prayer life at that moment went from a little bit every day to huge. It was just like a big request, and I'm like, it wasn't. And then God like calmed me down, and He's like, what is it that you're wanting? And I was like, Lord, He asked me to marry him. He's not a believer. I know you don't want me to marry him unless he's a believer. I don't want that for myself. And I don't know what to do. I love him. I love his family. And I've done the things you've asked me. Like, I'm praying for this guy, and I held fast of a Bible verse, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And I like held on to that prayer, and I was just like, as for me and for my house, this is what I'm praying for. And I remember at that moment thinking, I'm going to make this engagement as long as I can be until this guy is like, accept the Lord.
We got engaged in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So, 5 years, 2008, we got engaged.
Celibate. We were, it's important.
I'm saying how long it got drawn out. So
Yeah.
we got engaged in 2008. That would be Halloween 2008, and then we actually got married in April of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So that was almost 2 years, at least 1.5 year engagement.
Yeah.
Because it took me a while. It took me a while to
because everyone was just like, so you got engaged, and when are you going to get married? When's your wedding? And I was like, I don't know, maybe in a year or two, and I wasn't really giving a date, but I did give, at that moment, people were asking, I was like, okay, let's just, at this, I think it was summertime, and I was like, okay, in October next year.
And she didn't tell me, I never got an ultimatum. She never told me, she had never explained to me why she wasn't in no hurry.
Yeah.
I kind of just always assumed it had to do with her finishing school first.
Yeah.
So, like, it was, for me, I didn't know. I didn't know that her conversation with Christ was that I can't marry him until he's a believer. And so I never had a pressure to become a believer.
Yeah.
It wasn't,
And that was like the big thing, because
yeah.
I
So
wasn't
she wasn't.
trying to force you. I was trying to.
She was sneaky about it a little bit. She would like, "Hey, I'm going to. What are you doing on Sunday?" She just set me up for like, "Oh no, I got nothing going on." And okay, well, Sunday morning we're going to go to church.
Yeah,
Like,
but
oh.
it wasn't like.
No,
in-
no, it wasn't. No,
it was,
not all the time. And it
yeah.
was. I just we were just talking about
It
this
was
the other day.
just
That's why I brought that up.
invitation, you know.
Yeah, but you were even the other day you were saying that you didn't
Yeah.
like that. Like, what, you make sure I had a clear day on Sunday so you
Yeah.
could ask, you could.
I can get you
Yeah.
to church.
But the big thing was is that when we were planning where we want to get married, what she kept saying that she wanted to get married in the church. It was, was it a specific church? It was my mom, the church my folks went to, right, in Gilroy. Is that where you wanted, or was it a different church?
It was a different church, I believe. Just remembered. No, I think it was in Gilroy.
It was
I have no idea.
I forget. Either way, it was like, she wanted to get married in a church.
In a church, yeah.
And when she brought home the flyers for the church or whatever, the information packet of getting married at a church, the church requirements were that both parties were believers and followers of Christ.
Yeah.
And I didn't fit that. So I'm reading this and I'm thinking to myself, like, that's not me. Like, how am I going to, I want her to have her dream wedding. That's what she wants. I want that to happen, but I can't. I'm not a believer. I don't meet these requirements. So my thought process is, well, I could pretend.
Yeah.
I could start going to church and I could pretend to be a believer so that she can get her wedding. And so at that point I started going to church. I just I just go appease her, help her, get the end goal of getting married at a church, and she liked the company of me going to church, and so whatever I could do that. It's just sacrifice of an hour and a half of my day, and we did that for a few times. I don't know how many months we went to churches, just random, and then hearing the word. But you hear the word, it's going to start working in you, and we end up going to this. I don't even remember where it was. It was
in Sacramento. I think it's in the West Sac. I remember just being in West Sac.
Yeah, so this is probably now around 2009. So we got engaged in 2008. We're probably about midway through 2009 or so. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly. I don't remember. And we at this point too, we're starting to talk about a date because she's. Now that I'm going to, so I started going to church and started pretending. I don't know if she believed that I was, because I never told her I'm going to pretend. It was all in my own head. So I just started more and more going to church, and I think she was feeling that I was more and more becoming a Christian. And so we started talking about dates. We started talking about October. It was 10-8-10 because it's the numbers.
Yeah, it was 10-8-10. Yeah.
So the date of 10-8-10 started happening, coming around to get married. And so we ended up going to the Sacramento church that we're talking about. And then all I remember, it was not a huge church, but it was a good amount of people. And the pastor was like this biker dude. Like when we get there's a whole bunch of Harleys outside. We get in there and we start sitting down and doing worship and all that stuff. And then when the pastor comes out, he's like some burly biker dude. He's got the vest. He's got the big old mutton chop.
Totally remind me of your dad.
Yeah, just a total biker dude. And he's just preaching, and I don't even remember the sermon. I don't have a clue what he was talking about, but it spoke to me. And, I don't know if I was crying. I might have been. And at the end of the service, he says, if you accept the Lord, if you heard words or something like that, and you accept Christ in your life, just repeat the words after me. And I did. And then he asked if anybody has done that. Did he ask us to stand up or raise our hand? Or?
Yeah. So, no, he was just saying like if you believe in your heart, just raise your hand. And at that moment, I was holding your hand. I was sitting on your left, and I was holding your left hand. And I guess you at this moment, my head was down. I remember praying for Robbie, at that moment, and I guess you raised your hands with your right hand. And all of a sudden, the pastor said, "Okay, young man." He said, I remember him saying, "Okay, young man over there, I want you to stand up."
No.
And at that moment, I felt my hand. And I was like, at that moment, I remember, oh, man, that's awesome. I was like so happy for that person. And I remember you taking, and I was holding your hand, and you stood up. It felt like a slow-mo slow motion memory for me, because it was like I remember feeling my hand standing up, and I looked up, and and then you were saying the words, and I was
Yeah.
just bawling.
Yeah, so in front of the whole congregation, I stood up and then
Yeah.
I repeated the words after him, and um, it was powerful. It was a powerful message. It was
Yeah.
powerful, and at that point, I was no longer pretending.
Yeah.
Um, and so so then that's where my journey started, and we just I had a lot of ups and downs. I still had a lot of failures. I still had a lot to learn. I was a very, very baby Christian. I still kind of think that I'm a baby Christian,
I think
years
we
later.
all,
But,
yeah.
you know, I think there's just a lot
Yeah.
that happened there. But yeah, so I accepted Christ, and that was in 2009. Shortly thereafter, I got a hold of my Uncle Grant. I asked him to baptize me. So we went to, I think it was early 2010. Well, was it 09 still? It might have been late 2009 when I got baptized, or maybe
Yeah.
early 2010. And then
And at this moment, that's when the wedding got expedited.
so instead of, we're like, well, why are we gonna wait?
It was like 10/8/10, and it was like a whole year still.
Yeah,
It was like a year and a half or something.
Yeah, we're like, we can't wait that long.
Yeah, and then at that
Right.
moment, I remember saying, I'm like, okay, well, now
Yeah.
is the plan.
And so Joy's got a favorite number that's always been like assigned to her from school and all this stuff, and it's 409.
It's 4/9, yeah.
And then I just looked at the calendar and I'm like, hey, Joy, April 9th is it's a Saturday or something like that. Maybe it was a Sunday. I think it might have been a Sunday. I don't remember what day
I
it
don't
was.
remember. What it was.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was a weekend. And so let's do it. That's what's changed. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
And
So we went from October 2010 to
April
2010.
2010. And
And that was
the
like the first 10 years of
wedding
our...
bells were
Yep.
ringing. Yeah, so it took me 10 years to get to allow Christ to work in my life.
Yeah.
This young lady here is the one that was the opened the door.
Yeah.
I was reluctant. I didn't.
And God is so good. 10 years of that relationship.
Mhm.
And to see that unfold now, like looking back now, in the
It's a
first 10
miracle.
years of it, it's like such a miracle.
There's
Like,
so
I
many things
remember,
that we
like,
had
the
against
step
us.
and rolling, and the distance relationship that we had for almost 7 years,
Yep.
and
A
you
celibate
partying,
relationship
a
for
celibate,
like 4
really-
years,
yeah,
two
I
or
think
3
about
years.
3 years, and
I forget it that long.
yeah, it was a long time. I remember you would be on the ground all the time, but to getting married, that was just the beginning.
Yep.
And maybe next time we'll continue the second half of because
Oh,
at that
yeah.
moment, that's also when we hit rock bottom.
Yeah, we've had a lot of ups and downs since
Yeah,
then.
we have a major down in the half, 5 years ago, and that was terrible. And
Mhm.
we'll come back and talk about that. So
Yep. But I remember our wedding was awesome. I remember it was like the fastest day of my life. It was.
it was so fun.
It's like hard to say that it was the best day of my life because the kids' births were pretty good highlights as well. But the thing is that the day of our wedding is a day of celebration.
Yeah.
The day of kids being born is just tiring, but the blessing is
It's
immense.
the same, yeah.
Right. So it's. I guess I don't know. I do think that the wedding was probably the best day of my life. It was just amazing. It was so much fun. The night before, like, we had bachelor parties and bachelorette parties and stuff. The night before the wedding, thankfully, we both showed up and we were both sober minded when we showed up. But the accumulation of those 48 hours, I think, was just so fun. Having all my friends, everybody like celebrating us the night before. We actually ended up having our bachelor and bachelorette parties like coincidentally meet at the bar. We ended up going. It's a small town, so there's a few different bars to choose from, but we ended up at the same bar. And then we were there for a little bit, and then we parted ways at the end. And the day of the wedding was just a freaking blast. It was so much fun. It went by so flippin' fast.
Yeah, and I have to thank our friends at that moment, because they took care of business. Like, we didn't know things happened after we got married.